Welcome to Module 5. Last time we walked through all 7 core categories. Now we go deep on the first one. Transformers. There are only 3 components here, and they look simple, but they're where most beginner mistakes happen. We'll look at each one in a real project, see exactly what happens to your data before and after, and finish with best practices, bad practices, and the trick questions interviewers love to ask about these 3. Let's go. Transformers sit at the very bottom of the core palette. 3 components: remove variable, set payload, and set variable. And here's the flow we'll use throughout this module. An HTTP listener starts it, then set payload, then set variable, then remove variable, one after another. This is a real project, so everything you see is exactly what you'll see on your own screen. Before we touch a transformer, you need to know what they're changing. Every message traveling through a flow is wrapped in a Mule event, and it has 3 parts. The payload is the data itself, the body of the message. Attributes are metadata about it, set by whatever connector received it, like HTTP headers and query parameters. And variables are values you create yourself to carry information along the flow. Now, one thing that catches everyone out: the Mule event is immutable. Every change creates a brand new event instance. So, when you replace a payload, you're not editing it. You are throwing the old one away and making a new event. Remember that. It explains everything that follows. First component, set payload. Click it on the canvas and its settings open in the Mule properties panel at the bottom. There are only 2 things here: display name, which is the label shown on the canvas, and value, which is the new payload. In this project, the value is a data weave expression building an object with an ID, a name, and a last name. Notice the hash and square bracket wrapper. That's data weave. Anything inside it is evaluated. If you type plain text without that wrapper, you get a literal string instead. On the left there are extra tabs: MIME type and metadata. And there's a catch with MIME type we'll come back to at the end. Now the important part: what actually happens. Before set payload runs, the payload is whatever the listener received, say the incoming request body. Attributes hold the HTTP information. There are no variables yet. After set payload runs, the payload is now the new object. Attributes are untouched. Variables are untouched. And here's the part that matters most: the original payload is gone. Completely. There is no undo, no previous payload, no history. If you needed that incoming data later in the flow, you had to save it into a variable before this component ran. That single mistake, overwriting a payload you still needed, is probably the most common bug in beginner Mule applications. Second component, set variable. Its settings have one more field than set payload. Display name again, then name, which is the variable's name. Here it's myvar, and value, which is what goes in it. Here a data weave expression calling UUID to generate a unique identifier. Look at the panel on the right. Under Mule message you can see payload, attributes, and variables, and this is genuinely useful. As you add components, Studio shows you what exists in the event at that point. Once this component runs, myvar appears in that variables list. So what changes? Before, we have the payload that set payload just created, the attributes, and no variables. After set variable runs, there's now a variable called myvar holding a UUID. And critically, the payload is completely untouched. That's the whole point of a variable. It lets you carry an extra value along the flow without disturbing the data you're actually processing. You reference it later with vars.myvar. If you run set variable again with the same name, it overwrites the old value. It doesn't create a second one. Same name means the same variable. Third component, remove variable. It has just one setting: name, the name of the variable to delete. And now look carefully at this screen, because there's a mistake here that's very easy to make. The name field contains hash, square bracket, vars.myvar. That is an expression, and it evaluates to the value inside myvar, the UUID string, not to the name myvar. So Mule goes looking for a variable literally called that UUID, doesn't find one, and removes nothing. No error, no warning. It just silently does nothing. What this field wants is the name itself. Myvar, plain, with no hash and no brackets. Watch for this one. It's a classic. Written correctly, here's what happens. Before, the payload is our object, and myvar exists holding the UUID. After remove variable runs, myvar is gone from the variables list. The payload is untouched, and the attributes are untouched. Why bother removing it at all? Memory. Every variable is carried along with the event for as long as that flow runs. In a small flow this is irrelevant, but inside a for each loop over 50,000 records, or in a batch job, Variables you no longer need are real memory you're wasting. Remove them when you're genuinely done with them. Now the practical stuff. Starting with naming, because this costs teams real time. Look at the display names in this project. Add payload name here and add name here. Those are placeholders that were never filled in. 6 months later, nobody knows what that component does without clicking it. So, don't leave the default set variable, and don't write add name here. Do write what it actually does. Set customer ID, not set variable. Build order response, not set payload. Same rule for variable names. Don't use myvar, temp, or data, they tell you nothing. Do use customer ID, order total, is premium customer. Use camel case, be specific, and never abbreviate to save typing. You write the name once and read it 100 times. A question people ask constantly: how many set variables should I use? If you need 1 or 2 values, use set variable. It's clear and readable. But if you find yourself dragging in 4, 5, 6 set variables in a row, stop. That's 6 components on your canvas, 6 things to maintain, and 6 places to look when something's wrong. Instead, use one transform message and build all those fields in a single data weave script. One component, one place to read, and data weave is faster at it. The rule of thumb: 1 or 2 set variable is fine. 3 or more related values, switch to transform message. Same with set payload. Simple static value or one small expression, use set payload. Anything involving mapping fields, converting formats, or filtering a list, use transform message. That's not a preference. MuleSoft's own documentation says set payload is not recommended for complex transformations. Let's put that together as a checklist. Set payload, good, simple values, and save the old payload to a variable first if you'll still need it. Bad, writing a complex multi-line transformation in it, or overwriting a payload you still need. Set variable, good, descriptive names, set it once, use it for values you'll need later in the flow. Bad, 5 in a row where one transform message would do. Vague names like temp, or setting a variable you never actually read. Remove variable, good, use it in loops and batch jobs where memory matters, and pass the plain name with no expression. Bad, putting one after every single variable in a short flow. That's just a noise. We're using an expression in the name field, which silently does nothing. And the flip side, when to reach for something else entirely. Don't use set payload when you're transforming structure, converting JSON to XML, mapping fields between systems, or filtering a list. That's transform message and data weave. Don't use set variable to store the whole payload just so you can get it back. That duplicates a potentially large object in memory. Use the flow reference target attribute instead. Don't use set variable for configuration values like URLs or timeouts. Those belong in a properties file. And don't use remove variable in a short flow that's about to end anyway. When the flow finishes, every variable is discarded automatically. Removing them manually one line before that achieves nothing. Finally, the questions interviewers actually ask about these 3. 1. After 2 set payloads, can you get the first payload back? No, it's gone unless you saved it into a variable first. 2. Does set variable change the payload? No, never. 3. You set a variable inside a flow called with flow reference. Is it available back in the parent flow? Yes, flow reference keeps the same event, so variables set in the child come back. 4. Same question, but the child was called over HTTP request instead. Now the answer is no. HTTP crosses a network boundary, variables do not survive it, and attributes get replaced entirely. 5. What's the difference between attributes and variables? Attributes are set by the connector and get replaced by the next connector. Variables are yours and you control them. 6. Does setting the MIME type on set payload convert your data? No, it only labels the output. To actually change the format you need an output directive in the data weave itself. And 7. Is a Mule event mutable? No, every change creates a new event instance. So, to recap, set payload replaces the payload, and the old one is gone forever. Set variable creates a named value and never touches the payload. Remove variable deletes one, and it needs the plain name, not an expression. Name everything for what it does. 1 or 2 values, transformers are fine. 3 or more, switch to transform message and data weave. And remember, the event is immutable. Every change builds a new one. In the next module we move on to components, logger, transform message, flow reference, and the rest of that group. See you there.